the people who bought it off her did one simple thing. They took the book, they didn't change any of the contents of the book. They simply changed
the cover,
the name on the cover of the book from Astrological Love, very esoteric name, to How to Satisfy a Woman Every Time. And they sold 1 million copies. The same book, the same content, but simply by changing the way it was pitched, they unlocked massive sales in their business. So we take you through a process of aligning your pitch to be sure that you're optimized to catch the kind of people that you are actually looking for.
No worries. Profitable advertising in economic downturn. Okay, let's go. Francis Val-Neboh, right?
Yes.
Okay, please introduce yourself.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Francis, and I serve as CEO for Dobandi Technologies. We are an AI tech startup in the research space, and our mission is really to transform the way research is conducted here in Africa, and also to change the way that policy making happens. And so what we found is it takes a lot of time to conduct qualitative research. So we came in to say,
how do we change that? How can we use technology to make it so that if you wanted to interview 1,000 people, it doesn't take you 5 years? And so our technology helps researchers, academics, policymakers, entrepreneurs to conduct large-scale qualitative interviews simultaneously. So you can speak with 100 people at the same time, wherever they are in the world. And at the end of that whole process, you have everything that you need to analyze the data that you've just gotten. And all of that is just qualitative data now being at your fingertips in just a fraction of the time. So that's a bit about what we do at Dobandi Technologies. I also run a digital advertising agency called Growth Jedi Labs. And we've served 34 clients over the past 7 years across different verticals. We have clients in Asia, Africa, and the United States. And typically our clients are, on the agency side of things, are IT service providers who make anywhere from maybe 500,000 to $1 million USD. So people who develop software on behalf of other people, for instance. And typically what we help them do is help them maximize the return on their investment without necessarily inflating their ad budgets. And so that's where I think the topic I picked came from. I like speaking, passionate about entrepreneurship, impact-driven initiatives, And I am authoring my first book. I think I've told you this. I've started reading yours. Phenomenal story, by the way. I'm hoping we can talk a bit about some of the things that I learned that I saw there. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so let's start from the point of research. Okay, so for purposes of clarity, what is qualitative and quantitative research?
Oh, okay. So quantitative research is, or I'll say quantitative data is data that has to do with numbers, right? So it's the typical statistics that we hear about. So maybe you can say something like 50% of everybody in Ghana likes wache or something. I'm not saying that's an actual statistic, but data that's presented in the form of numbers can typically be pointed at to say that, okay, this is a quantity. So the quantity element is what informs the name. Qualitative tries to understand the why, so the reasoning, the motivation, the behavior that led to that quantity, that element of quantity that you see. So for instance, with the example of wache, since we're in Ghana, after you've discovered that maybe 50% of people like wache, the other 50 like kelewele, the qualitative side of things now seeks to understand why. How come they developed this liking for a particular dish? And so without being too technical, that's how I would differentiate it. So typically for you to understand that, I mean, you could try to ask a qualitative question using a form, but if I'm typing versus if you can actually hear me, it's very different. So the way you collect qualitative has to change. You can't do it the same way you collect quantitative data.
Okay, so what is it about research that many people don't agree with?
Okay, so there's this notion that with technology, you can't necessarily replace the human elements that needs to happen in an interview.
Right.
There's a lot of skepticism. Some people that we've spoken to, they wonder, oh, you're using artificial intelligence. Are you sure you're not going to tamper with my data? And we're like, no, we're not tampering with your data. And we've also seen people who are yet to wrap their head around the concept of being able to conduct simultaneous interviews without you being the one doing the interview.
Okay.
And
so speak to that.
So thanks to advances in large language models,
Right.
what we call large language models, everybody knows ChatGPT at this point.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is an application. The technology underlying that is something called a large language model, which is GPT itself, generative pre-trained transformers. Now, LLMs or large language models have evolved since their origins, right? Originally, they were capable of just generating text, right? And you could only use them to manipulate text. However, they're at a point now where you're able to generate media. So there's AI generated music now. AI can now do speech to text and text to speech. AI is now able to generate videos. And what we've simply done is leverage the ability of large language models to understand language when spoken to, so audio, leveraging the ability to take audio, transform that into text to help automate the interview process. So we have our platform, for instance. What it does is, if you are to take an automated interview on our platform, you are not going to need to type at all, unless you want to. You would be hearing the questions read out to you, and you would be speaking back into the system. The system, the artificial intelligence behind the system now, will take what you've said, transcribe that, and then put it on the back end of the person who is conducting the interview.
Okay.
So that's how come we're able to do it. And because it's web-based, and also we have an offline application for it, anybody at all who has the link is able to have that experience in the same time that you may be.
Sounds interesting. Okay, so yeah. So now I need to do a focus group, and what do I define?
Okay, so you would typically start with the questions that you want to ask the focus group, and the flow we have in the system is a simple one. You key in the questions that you want to ask, and then it's similar to some of the forms that you've created before. You just plug in the questions. However, now what happens is, as questions are being read by the system to the people in the room, it takes it one at a time. And then to ask the question, everybody in the room can speak. It picks what everyone has said, and behind the scenes, we're able to know that, okay, this is this person speaking, this is this person speaking when we're looking at the transcripts, and so on and so forth. So it's as simple as just plugging in the questions that you want and letting people speak and letting the system carry on.
It sounds interesting. How long have you guys been doing it?
That was the product that we graduated with. And so we've been operating as a business for about a year plus now. However, we just launched our product itself only 2 months ago in July. July 2 months ago? July 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Sounds interesting. Let's talk about research. For the most part, not people, just like what he was saying about African literature, it seems like African research is now visible online. Have you thought about that? I
mean, there are platforms that do their best to give you the platform to publish. However, what I've seen rather is perhaps there's just not that much incentive for Africans to get involved in being researchers and publishing research work. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's about incentive, because the other individuals that publish is still the same incentive, no?
So incentives, I think they come in different forms. The difficulty involved in conducting research can either be an incentive or a disincentive.
Okay.
Right. Typically, something that we've also found is qualitative research can consume a lot of resources. It's very time consuming, it's very expensive, and we know this because we interact with people in our communities that we've created from all across Africa. If you ask them what's the number one thing holding you back, usually they tell you, I spoke with someone once, I remember, and I asked him, well, what are your top 3 challenges as someone who is a researcher? He was doing his PhD at the time. He mentioned that he said he has 3 problems. The first is cost, the second is cost, and the third is cost. He said that to create the effect, and I think the message was clear. There's a lot of resources that it takes, but sadly, not many people have that. So they are not incentivized in that sense.
Again, you're making a valid point, but it's about proposal, right? If the research is, well, yeah, I understand. It takes a business to fund it for the person to do the research, but if the individual who wants to do the research writes a valid proposal and recirculates it, I think they will get a fund. They will get some funding because there is an economic case for good research that will provide insight into some of the relevant data that we are looking for on the continent. Yeah, so my thought, there's been an ongoing dialogue on the fact that the search engine is not giving us African voices when it comes to research. I don't know why, but yeah, so maybe you can ask some of your friends that are in that direction.
So there's this gross underrepresentation of the African continent in the world of artificial intelligence. That is a fact. We are hoping to change that. So my organization, we can't change it all on our own, but rather we're hoping to contribute to a different narrative that we're now trying to shape. Because I'll give an example. Currently, many of the AI voices that you might have interacted with, maybe on your Apple devices or ChatGPT, they are Western. They are not African voices, right? And
it makes sense because Apple is not an African.
Exactly. However, if we are in Africa and we want to use their technology and we are not that represented, you see that there's that skew. And so what we've
just a moment.
Yeah.
If I'm an Indian, if this is India, will it sound like an Indian? Does it sound like an Indian over there?
So I think that's what I'm getting to, right? By default, as we speak, you don't have that ability, that customization.
Right.
Right. Hence the African voices and the African opinions not even being represented. So currently we are doing some work with UNDP. There's this program called the Young Africa Innovates Project. I don't know if you're aware of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Now that program is geared towards educating entrepreneurs who are atypical. In other words, they are not your typical, maybe I went to Harvard, I went to UG. They may not have gone to university at all. They may not even speak English, but yet we want to train them. So we were brought in to help with bridging that language barrier between the educators and the trainees. So we've found a way to embed, for instance, local dialect, Twi, Ewe, into our system so that the people on the other end, when they are being interviewed, will hear their local dialect. On our back end, we still say English, we can still say English, but to them, they hear the language that they are used to. Now, that is something that we have to do because previously it's not been done. The resources for that can also be a bit daunting. So this is the state of artificial intelligence in Africa as we speak, but we are doing our best to shape that so that we are in a better place.
Yeah, well, of course. The more we get into platform ownership, the more we can create contextualized tools and solutions that think like our people,
exactly
our people and address the needs of our people. Okay, so let's talk about digital advertising,
Sure.
which is one of your favorite topics. What is it
Yes.
in advertising that people don't really understand?
People don't understand advertising is a long-term game.
Okay.
I've seen that a lot. It's a very well-founded motivation to want to make a quick return on your investment. I think I heard you say the other day that a lot of people, was it you or one of the speakers? He said it's as though people want to start a business today and then make profit tomorrow.
He was one of my speakers.
Yes, I think his name was Emmanuel. I watched that session. And it's true. So that short-term thinking, when it gets transitioned into the world of advertising, actually kills your gains. In other words, you shortchange yourself by chasing short-term profits through advertising. I'll give you an example. We run ads for different businesses. We've worked in many different niches. If you're selling maybe your book, for instance, right? The logical, I'm from southeastern Nigeria, I'm an Igbo person. So the Igbo person in me is thinking, okay, if I give you $1,000 to sell my book, how many copies of my book did you sell?
Yeah.
That's what everyone is thinking. However, because the internet has changed the way that people buy, the first question someone is asking when they see your ad is not, is this a good book? The first question they're asking is, who is this person? Why should I buy the book? Right? So advertising has to answer those questions in the lead up to now asking them to make the purchase. So that element of catering to the buyer journey, what we call the buyer journey, is largely lacking. People want to run the ad, put out the ad that says buy my product, and then get everybody in the world to buy their product. So it's a gross misconception that I've seen.
Okay, so how do you help such founders?
So I show them the benefits of approaching things differently.
Okay.
Such that they make way more profit actually than if they were chasing the short-term gains. Without being too technical, there's something called the minor market mistake. So at any given point in time, if there's a group of 100 people, only about 3 of them are willing to buy right now. About 17% of them are aware that they have a problem, but they are window shopping. About 20% of them know they have a problem, but they are not even considering buying right now. So typically what we do is we try to help founders, entrepreneurs to target each of these categories of people and then guide them to the point where they now are willing and able to make a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guide them.
We do that through follow-up, by the way. So follow-up content. So once you generate a lead, what we call lead generation, then you need certain pieces of contents that you put out over time. So the contents that goes in between I've indicated interest and I'm willing to buy, that's what we call the follow-up. And you can use different channels to do that. You can use social media, email marketing, etc. The whole point is that you maintain that relationship with the customer until the point where they're willing to buy.
Okay. So yours is to lead them on a journey, present tools that will guide them to buy. Okay, so which brings us to the next one. Platform owners are, yesterday I was talking to one of the digital marketers that, came into speak on digital marketing best practices for startups. And we were talking about the cost of advertising on many platforms like LinkedIn. And you said you've had tremendous success in that direction. You want to talk about that?
I mean, yes, we have seen tremendous success. We specialize in the Meta ecosystem. We've done some work in LinkedIn as well, but we find that, especially for most African businesses, right, the cost of advertising on LinkedIn can be extremely high. Unless you're geared up for that, usually we advise people to explore the Meta ecosystem. Things are a bit more affordable there, and you have more control over how you're able to reach specific demographics.
Are they human beings?
Yeah, they're human beings at the end of the day. And I think it's a good question that even will lead me to this next point. At the end of the day, when people come to me and they complain that, okay, I'm spending too much on my advertising, for instance, there are two ways to maximize your return on advertising. You either lower your cost of acquiring a customer, or you maximize the amount of revenue that you can make from one customer. So for people, like I said, if you're geared up for that, on LinkedIn, if you're able to justify with the product ecosystem that you have, the cost of advertising, then it doesn't matter how much you're spending. You will still do well, you will still scale. So I think the conversation is really helping platform owners, like you call them, to understand how to control both sides of the equation. So helping them understand how to lower costs of acquisition and helping them understand how to maximize cost of acquisition. We have a framework that we use to help them do both those things. I'm happy to share maybe later on in the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. My people are coming. Apologies. Okay, so Francis,
Yeah.
I want to acquire leads on, say, you say you are not too conversant with LinkedIn.
Oh, we are, but we specialize on Meta.
Meta. Okay. I want to acquire leads on Meta. Then I'm still struggling. I come to you. What would the process be like?
Interesting. We follow a 10-step process.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I can run through it very quickly.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
So when I audit clients who come to me, I take them through a 10-step process.
Right.
I call it the Apocalypse. It's an acronym.
Okay.
And Apocalypse is an acronym for audience, pitch, offer, concept, assets, lead generation, indoctrination, presentation, and then you have your sales and so you have your presentation, you have your sales, and then you have your execution. So that's a 10-step process. So typically we start with the audience. We'll take you through a very meticulous process of defining who it is you're trying to reach in the first place.
Yeah.
After that, we figure out how are you perceived by that group of people. So what is your pitch to them? How are you presented to that group of people? When we work on the pitch, we want to do it in such a way that it resonates with the people that you're trying to reach. If your pitch is disconnected from the audience, they will not buy. There's a fun story. You probably heard about the 5 love languages and things like that. There is a similar story, not the 5 love languages, but there was a lady who wrote a book called Astrological Love, Nora Hayden, many years ago. It was a book about how to have good relationships. So if you're a guy, how do you get your woman to engage with you, understand you, so on and so forth. Fantastic book. She's an expert in human psychology, but the book was struggling to sell. I think she sold maybe about 1,000 copies or so. Finally, she said, you know what, I just need someone to buy. And then, you know the way publishing works, you probably have 1,000 copies in your bedroom waiting to be sold. So she just said, I want someone who is going to buy the rights to this book and probably buy off the quantity I have at a discounted price. And she did that. The people who bought it off her did one simple thing. They took the book, they didn't change any of the contents of the book. They simply changed
the cover,
the name on the cover of the book from Astrological Love, very esoteric name, to How to Satisfy a Woman Every Time. And they sold 1 million copies. The same book, the same content, but simply by changing the way it was pitched, they unlocked massive sales in their business. So we take you through a process of aligning your pitch to be sure that you're optimized to catch the kind of people that you are actually looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have. The rest of it it's quite...
Keep going, we have time.
Okay, that's amazing. So when we're done with that, you have your audience definition down. We got the way you present your value proposition to them down. Then we look at the offer itself. So while your pitch has to do with what we do for the product itself, your offer is different. So again, another misconception I see is business owners thinking that their product is the offer. So the product that they have is the offer that they're making to the market, but they are different things, right? Your product is the tangible thing that I get when I give you my money. So if you're buying a camera, I give you my money, I get the camera. The camera is the product. An offer is a special reason for me to take a specific action. Now, this is where things like maybe promotion, bundling packages up comes in, giving discounts and all of that. So if I tell you that, okay, this camera, I can give you 4 of them for the price of 3, that is an offer, right? So coming up with that angle is what we do at that offer stage. It differs for different products and businesses. What we do will depend on your target market, the product that you sell. But we found that unless you actually make your product and package it into an irresistible offer, you will struggle to even maximize the profits that you could make. And then you have your audience down, presentation down, offer down. Concepts is the next thing. We found that there are certain concepts that are easier to scale than others. So for instance, if I'm a painter, there's only so many artworks I can create in a day. So at the conceptual level, that's not very geared to scale. If, however, I'm a painter and I create a course on painting, all of a sudden I can reach a wider audience. I can scale much more. So we look at the concept level, we're really looking at your business model. That's what we're looking at there, to see how do we engineer your business so that you're able to capture wider market share. I think that was concept, and then assets comes in. So this is where we now start developing the different creatives that you now eventually see online. What's your ad copy going to look like, etc. So those are the assets. Then we get into lead generation, which is now where we deploy the advertising assets on the different platforms. So at this point, you'd place your ads on Meta, Google, LinkedIn, the platform of your choice. And then it then becomes a process of indoctrination. So like I mentioned earlier, once you've generated leads, you will have to take them through a process. You have to teach them certain things. For some people, you have to break certain limiting beliefs. For some of them, you have to overcome certain objections. All of that happens at the indoctrination stage. So you capture all of that. And then you now finally present them with the particular products that you're selling. And then you sell. Depending on what you sell, you might be in charge of execution, which is the last element. Or maybe that's outsourced, or maybe that's something that someone else does for you. If you're into affiliate marketing, for instance, your job is to sell, someone else executes. However, at that execution point, it's very important that you deliver high quality products and services. Otherwise, your cost of acquisition will always keep going up instead of going down. And one of the hallmarks of a very solid business is that over time, your cost of acquiring customers just keeps going down. Because now more and more people are spreading the word for you completely for free. That's how we think about it in a nutshell. It's called the Apocalypse Framework. Yeah.
Very interesting. So in my mind, I'm watching you do the Apocalypse Framework all over the social media networks. Okay. That's interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about business in general. You've been in Ghana for how long?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. Not so long.
Not as long as you.
Yeah, I know. But what has been your impression so far?
Ghana is a peaceful country. Peace-loving country, great food, hospitable people. And there's that security that you don't have in some other African countries. I was telling someone, so sometimes when I'm speaking with my people back home, late at night, and I'm outside, they're asking me, why are you outside? Go inside the house. Do you want somebody to come and knock you on the head or something, or kidnapping and all of that? But you don't have the fear of that, at least in all the places that I've lived in Ghana. I've not had to worry, look over my shoulder. So there's that security as well.
Which other country have you lived in?
I've lived in Ghana, Nigeria, just those two.
Okay.
Yes. In Nigeria, I've lived in different cities as well. In Ghana here, I've stayed at East Legon, I've stayed in Tema, a little bit of Bawe as well.
So if you were to choose between Nigeria and Ghana, where would you
Oh goodness. I think the countries, so currently because of what I do, I shuttle the two countries. Yeah, so that would be my answer. The two countries have their strengths, and I try to play such a way that I maximize the best of both worlds. So, yeah.
Did you express everything you wanted to say about the advertising process?
There's always more that can be said. I find that one of the things that I've discovered is largely in advertising itself, there's also a shortage of insights. Now, imagine with me for a second that you're my co-pilot. We're in a helicopter.
Right.
And we're flying over Ghana, or we're flying over your war zone. And then all of a sudden I open the door and I drop you from the helicopter.
Okay.
And I ask you, go to battle, and I'll meet you on the other side. You're laughing because it's a bit unfair. Now, for one thing, you have no military intelligence whatsoever. You may not even be equipped at all for the battle ahead. And so something I've seen is that a lot of times when people are conducting business, they don't know it, but they are like that warrior who you just drop in the middle of a battlefield, and you probably tie one arm behind their back and tie one leg, like you just tell them, I want you to walk on one leg, I want you to fight with just one arm. I'll meet you on the other side. You meet his dead body on the other side, right? And so in this analogy, your left and your right arms are really the two types of insights that you can have. But two major ones are the quantitative and the qualitative one. So when we say that insight is important, we're really advocating for businesses to now take a step further, right? Rather than just making decisions based on what people are doing, understand why they are doing it. Amazon did this. The whole people also like section of most of these shopping sites.
Yeah.
It wasn't always there. There was a time when it was not there. But because these big companies, Amazon for instance, understood the power of insights, they were able to take the information about what you like, combine that with what other people like, and even why they like what they like, to determine what to recommend to you. So recommendation engines are based on both qualitative and quantitative insights. When Amazon implemented that, their revenue increased by 33%. Almost overnight. Right?
Well, it makes sense.
It makes sense. And
Yes.
this is why. It makes sense because the depth of understanding you have on your market is directly proportional to the kind of empathy that you can unlock. And the level of empathy you can unlock has a direct effect on the potency of the offer that you're making to someone.
Okay.
And if your offer is potent enough, naturally, you tap into word of mouth. If it's personalized enough, you tap into word of mouth. And when you tap into word of mouth, your cost of customer acquisition
Goes down.
it goes down. And so that's how come these large companies invest so much in making sure that they have the insights component of their business right. Because they know that if they do their job well, over time, they'll be spending less and less and less, and they'll be making more and more and more.
So what do you tell your clients?
I tell them a number of things. So in terms of quick wins, action items that they can conduct.
Let's hear them.
Yeah, I advise them to really lean into qualitative research before they launch advertising campaigns.
Okay.
Don't just put out a survey asking, do you like this product?
Okay. So sell a paper clip with qualitative research.
So exactly. So if we're to go with the analogy, it's the same thing. You've probably heard the saying that nobody buys a drill, they buy a 1/4 inch hole in the wall. Right. So if we apply that to the paper clip, there's a difference between asking you to buy a paper clip, for instance, which is, how much is paper clips now? Maybe 10 CDs or something, right? Any random paper clip. But if I speak with you and I understand that you have a very serious investor presentation to prepare for, coming up in a few days, and we discover that there's no other place to buy paper clips in Ghana, or maybe let's say in your immediate locality, and I tell you that the paper clip is 50 CDs, you will buy it because it's that important to you. But until I sat down with you to understand what you were hoping to use the paper clip for, I could not make
So
that.
how would you get that data?
So, like I said, when we encourage them to lean into qualitative research, right, we advise them to simply,
Collect more data.
collect more data. We have our research platform, which
Listen to their talks.
so
Listen to their thoughts.
there's social listening. There's that.
Listen
there's a
to
place for that.
the one they think in their head.
You probably wonder how TikTok almost knows what you're thinking. I don't know how that.
So how does that work?
So again, it's all data, but here's what I advise them to do. Conduct large-scale interviews with your customer base.
Okay.
And you will have
But
to
customers are bored of
incentivize them.
interviews.
Exactly. You will have to incentivize them for that to happen. Now, what we have found is people shy away from incentives because of cost, right? But we've seen that with the right methodologies, that you can actually have zero marginal cost on the incentives that you offer to people. So one of the things that we encourage them to do is look for those avenues that enable you give someone an incentive that doesn't cost you so much. You can use digital media, for instance. If I tell you that, okay, I want you to take a particular survey, for instance, and I know that you're interested in maybe knowing how to shoot videos, for instance, or knowing how to play basketball better, whatever the case is, and I offer you premium training on that particular subject for free, for instance, or at a discount, all of a sudden, it's not costing me extra to create the course again and again. I've already shot, the course is produced, everything is set. If it's an ebook, the book is already in digital format. It doesn't cost me anything to distribute one more copy. By using channels like that, you find you're able to get the people that you need incentivized enough to pay attention and give you the information that you want from them. So incentivizing large-scale qualitative research is something that we push for.
Okay. Interesting. You know, it sounds all flamboyant when you are describing it because you're the marketer.
I know. So one of the things that we are proud of is that it's not just the theory. We have the case studies on our website as well. So people are able to actually go and read how...
But we haven't heard the voice of the customer.
The customer in what sense?
The one that you're collecting the data from.
How do you mean you've not heard the voice?
Yeah, like we've heard your voice, the marketer, and we've probably seen the need for the vendor to have such insights.
Yes.
And
okay, now I
assets.
think I understand the question. Now,
So the
from
other
the
guy is missing
perspective,
from the
interesting. So I think that's interesting. From the perspective of the customer, again, you feel good when you order for something very unique to you online and you can get it delivered to you. So for them,
At what cost?
at almost no extra cost.
No, but of course it's at a cost because it's such personalization without any engagement with you means there's a backdoor, isn't it? But we know that, right?
So I think what you're alluding to is data privacy and how much of your information is being used without your knowledge.
Because obviously, recommendation is the data collected is not only used for recommendation, right?
There's that.
So there are other elements of the data. For example, let's say that you went to the market to buy foodstuff and you bought all the things you need. You made food, but you still have other foodstuff, right? So I guess, well, for the purpose of making a sale, right, there's a business case for that. But then for the purpose of the customer being in charge of their data and the customer being
remunerated. There are platforms that pay customers.
Do you pay customers for your data?
What we do is there's something called respondent panels, right? These are groups of people who have consented to participate in a survey in exchange for some sort of monetary reward. So there is a place and a time for that. And one of the reasons we even push for direct interviews is because in that kind of a setting, you have to get consent from the person you're interviewing before you can.
Your AI doesn't do those ones.
Oh, we do. We actually handle all of that. So ethics and compliance is a big part of what we do. We have a very serious
So
responsibility
if
as a
I
company.
speak to your AI once,
Sorry?
if I speak to your AI once,
Mhm.
does it retain just once, or it has my voice signature automatically for all time?
No, we actually don't keep maybe your voice data in our system. And again, ethically, we are middlemen between principal investigators and maybe respondents who they are interviewing. So what we do is before we even enable the investigator to use our platform, we make them prove to us that they've met all the ethical compliance checks, including the declaration of what they intend to do with the audio or the voice or the video of the person that they are.
And you are using a third-party system to process that information, aren't you?
So part of it is our custom system, part of it is third party.
The most part of it is third-party. A bulk of it, if I should say, is third-party, isn't it?
Yes. So I think it's how do I say, because I understand the underlying concern.
Yeah.
Recently I don't know if you were there at GDIW at an event. There was a lawyer speaking about some of the implications right now of businesses keying in certain prompts into artificial intelligence that you should beware, because if you divulge sensitive information into the system, there's no telling what's going to happen. Before you know it, maybe one of your staff goes to ask ChatGPT something and they divulge certain business secrets that you have. You don't have control. You can go to court, you can try to fight in court when the time comes, but it's going to be difficult for you to really retain ownership of your intellectual property if you're not careful. So what we do for us, understanding that this is the case, is we make sure that we check the compliance of the principal investigator. Then on our end, when we're feeding data into the system, we actually have this is all back-end technology. We have the ways that we distinguish between what we want the AI to hold in memory,
the API
for how long. So what do we want it to hold in memory, for how long, and then after a certain period of time, what do you do with that information? So it's an entire AI. So AI governance it's interesting, but there's a cycle to all of that. So it's a tricky thing because we're in the early stages, no doubt. But we do our best to make sure that at the end of the day, this is so that policy making can be better informed.
Yeah.
So our focus is how do we make sure that happens, and then make sure that we do as minimal damage to data integrity and privacy in the process. Yeah.
Okay. You're a nice guy. So for the purpose of conversation, I would agree with you. But what I would say is always at this point we can own the big system that controls some of those things. And so what we can do is to ensure that the providers of the service that we're using are keeping to the service agreement that they give us, and ensure also that we are responsible for whatever we collect from people, because at the end of the day, all we need is an API to process whatever layers that we build on top of the system that has already been established. And that is just about that, that is just about some level of guarantee that you can give, right? Unless you have platform ownership of the end-to-end system, then everything lives and is housed on your domain.
Sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about something else, which is as a young entrepreneur in Ghana, how has Ghana been fair to you?
As a young entrepreneur, I think Ghana has been kind.
Yeah, to you, right?
It has.
Yeah, because you've been shining. So how do you get ahead in Ghana?
I
I
mean,
have a speaker that will be talking about how to get ahead in Ghana.
really,
Yeah,
I would want to tune in.
yeah.
Um,
So
so
maybe I use it for intro into that subject.
just as a case study, I think it's interesting. I mean, I get some energy from that, learning to adapt.
Right.
When I'm speaking with someone who is maybe a native, and they don't know that I don't understand tree, for instance.
Right.
The dialogue that ensues for me to get them to understand that, please, I want you to speak English is quite interesting.
Right.
But I've seen that if you're able to communicate well enough non-verbally,
Right.
maybe using body language or maybe visual, like people are actually willing to help you get what you need. At the same time, I actually have, I mean, some of my friends who are here in Ghana, who are from Ghana, here in Ghana, I've asked them that, hey, you have to help me learn this language. One of them is here.
Yeah,
He knows
I
himself.
can see him documenting you.
So yeah,
When I began to ask you some of the questions, he's looking at me, this moderator, this interviewer, what are you doing?
fantastic interview, by the way. But yeah, it's been helpful having people who are willing to help you learn the language.
Yeah.
And I've also seen that wherever you are in the world, if you're valuable,
Right.
you will always find a place. There's always going to be a place for someone who can bring value to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's something that has actually helped me a lot in Ghana. And there's this concept of honor as well. I don't think it's spoken about enough.
Okay.
But honor is a big part of what I do. It's something that we learn from the Bible. I'm Christian, and so I found that much of my success actually is tied to that. So honor, like our pastor would say, is the number one, discerning, rewarding, and so it's the discerning, it's the celebrating, and if need be, the rewarding of the uniqueness of a person, an institution, etc.
Yeah.
So with human beings, the way it works is the more you're able to communicate that you understand, for instance, the sacrifice that has gone into something that this person has, the more open that person can be towards you.
Yeah.
And it's something that translates into service, right? Because when you say you want to reward somebody for their uniqueness, you can do that in a number of ways. You can serve, you can contribute maybe financially, you can patronize what they do, you can help them spread the word about what they do, all sorts of avenues. But at the end of the day, mentorship is really something that is built on that foundation of honor. And without mentorship, I don't think I'll be where I am.
So who is your mentor?
I have many. So I'm a product of many different mentors. So the first place where I draw my lessons from is from the Bible. So from the Bible, from spiritual leaders, my father figure, and then I've also been privileged to work with some really good managers in some organizations. So it's been a blend. Then there are mentors who mentor you from afar.
Right.
So you've never met them, right? When you're speaking about Patrick Bet-David, I felt a connection because I follow him as well.
You follow PBD.
PBD, the first book that I saw that he wrote was Your Next 5 Moves.
Yeah.
Right? How to think like a grandmaster entrepreneur.
Right.
So Patrick Bet-David, Alex Hormozy, Jordan Peterson, believe it or not.
Mm.
I see Peterson fans in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So Peterson, Simon Sinek.
Mm.
Those are people who sit on Bakwayo. I can go on and on.
Okay. That's nice. That's nice. Okay. So are you what is it that nobody has asked you about concerning yourself?
Concerning myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are very few people who meet me and ask me why I do what I do.
Okay. Why do you do what you do?
So at my core, I'm driven by a desire to fulfill what I believe is my God-given purpose.
Which is
to show forth His glory.
What is glory?
Very interesting question. I'm going to go a bit native for a bit.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, I'm Igbo, right? And I believe that, I don't know if it's that way everywhere in the world, but I believe that the names that our Igbo parents give their children goes a long way to shaping some part of their destiny.
Okay.
So my native name is actually Ugochukwu.
Okay.
And growing up, I learned that the literal translation of the word Ugo is the eagle.
Yeah.
Right.
In some more nuanced translations, you'd see it being translated as glory or majesty. And I think that has really played a role. Now, in terms of, if you think of the eagle, for instance, it's one of the most majestic birds that you can find. Did you know the wingspan of an eagle is about 8 feet? That's the distance between floor and ceiling for most rooms. The eagle is that big. When you see it on phone, it doesn't look that big, but it's actually a giant bird. But despite being that big, eagles are known to move at great speeds. Up to, if you drive, you know what it feels like to be moving at 120 kilometers an hour. Eagles can move that fast, despite being that big, right? And so there's an element of glory which I think has to do with defying the odds, right? And being able to show to humanity that certain things are possible, even though they've not been done before, is something that I am very drawn to. It's something that I think I've subconsciously dedicated my life to. And so when I read your book, or I'm still reading the book, Breaking the Limits, it connected on so many different levels. Because I've seen that there is that dimension of glory that just has to do with, like you wrote, breaking the limits.
You can talk, eh?
Hey.
I hope you have a good share in the company.
Hey.
Okay, that's nice.
What makes you say that?
Mr. Andy, are you joining my set?
It depends on what.
Okay. Okay, mic him, please. Yeah.
Okay.
My man, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Where are you going from here?
So from here, I'll probably head to East Legon.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'm super excited. I have a question though, if you don't mind. Sure. What does it feel like to be breaking a world record?
Can I be transparent? I haven't felt it.
Hey.
I did feel a little pressure the day I announced it, because that day I almost deleted it.
Hey.
I almost deleted it because it didn't occur to me what it was, the amount of work it was going to take until I sent the post, and I almost deleted the post. But afterwards, there is this strategy I use when I do things that I haven't done before. I live in the past of it, I live in the past of it, and I use it as a game.
I can relate.
Yeah. So I try to do like when I was looking for the speakers, I was like, okay, this is a numbers game, If you need 10, then score 100. Chances are you get 10. Yeah. That's the way we've been doing, we've organized over 20 events, and I knew since then my company started on social media. So if you need to invite 10 speakers for the event, you send 100 invitations, 100 actually, because you always get 10% unless you have a lot of equity with the people. So yeah, but I was pleasantly surprised, as I've said many times, because the response was beyond what I was expecting immediately. It took less than 1 month, and we filled all the slots with a lot of waitlist subscribers. I still don't feel it yet, but I know I'll feel it.
It's going to dawn on you maybe after the fact.
I know you're thinking. Clara has 55 hours. We have 74 hours.
I saw that and I was mind blown.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you on behalf of because this is not just about you. That's what actually drew me to it, right? The motivation behind it is something that I'm very aligned with, the tuition scholarships. that's the end goal. So all of this is exciting, but the impact it will have on those 100 people is, for me, the big win.
Yeah, let's hope everybody donates. Let's hope that the donation comes. We've got some donations though, and shout out to Divine and Shishi. They're based in the US, and they're also speaking at this event. So let's hope that in the end we get to, give our young people that opportunity to unlock their potential. All right, my man. Thank you.
All right.